A trailblazer for women in rugby league. She represented both her state, Queensland, and also Australia during her playing career. Now, she's a commentator for Fox League and currently the director of students for years 7 to 9. Joanne Barrett is a leader in both on and off the field and joins us today to talk about the lessons she learned during her playing career and also in the classroom. All right, Jo, welcome to the podcast. Now, for those who don't know, can you tell everyone what is your current role at Nudgee and how long have you been associated with the college for?
Well, my current role is Director of Students Years 7 to 9. So I'm based in the student formation team, working a lot with the house deans and, of course, the other director for 10 to 12 and the Dean of Students. And I have been associated with Nudgee since 2011.
Okay, so that's quite some time.
Yeah.
Director of Students 7 to 9, that sounds like a really tough job. Like that's an emotional stage. You got young boys here, you got parents. Like, honestly, what's it like? What does that mean?
Well, that's interesting you say emotional stage because that's a big part of the job, I guess, is managing and dealing with emotional responses for kids. But the focus obviously is years 7, 8, and 9, which is our middle years. So there's been a
And how many kids per year?
I think there's roughly 200, between 180 and 215 per year level. I'm not in enrolments, but essentially I'm sort of overseeing the pastoral care and formation of around 600 boys at that age group, which some people tend to naturally want to avoid, I guess, in our career sometimes, because it is primarily where the decision-making part of the brain slows down and the impulsivity speeds up in a way. So my role in the day-to-day for people particularly who aren't in education is around all the things that impact a boy outside of the classroom and the academics and the formation, both responding to problems and proactively educating them around how to be better and how to manage the stage that they're at in life. Comes through what we call student formation at Nudgee. Every boy's in a house. You might remember that as an old boy. All the houses have a house dean, and my role is to essentially work between them and our dean of students around decision-making and responding to problems, but also around what goes on for them in their time at Nudgee that helps them be the best they can. I don't know if that answered it for you, Wes, but
no, it did. It was really good. It was really good.
Behaviour management's a really boring, but another way of looking at it too.
Yeah, that's a little bit boring to say behaviour management, but I know what you mean. And what I did want to unpack a little bit is you said you address and work on things that impact the boys.
Yeah.
What are the most common things that impact the boys, both whether it's negative or positive, in those sort of 7 to 9 grade years?
Yeah, so it's around their interpersonal relationships. So
with family, with friends, with the school.
Exactly right. And lots of people talk about bullying, and it's learning what are we doing with relationships, right relationships. What's a big one for boys is what's the difference between bullying and banter, and sometimes adults are still working that out as well. So that features when there's
that's a we can spend an hour talking about the difference between bullying and bantering.
Podcast. It's also about what impacts their thinking, their learning in terms of, if there's stuff going on at home, if there's an illness, how are they settling in, particularly if they're new? What opportunities do they have outside of the classroom we don't run the social justice, but how are we connecting boys to be in the community? So probably a really nice way of looking at it is how are boys connecting and reconnecting if they've made a mistake or they've been vulnerable and haven't had such a good experience. So it can be heavy lifting, but it's really, really exceptional too.
Connecting with each other?
Connecting with each other, connecting with adults in their life, learning how to learn, what comes with mental health and well-being, and all, particularly in the well-being space, and the positives around that, the positive psychology around what can they do to engage and help each other.
It's interesting. Like I've got twin boys who are 10, so they're not quite at that stage, but they're only a couple of years off being in grade 7. You know, what do you think young men that are in grade 7, grade 8, grade 9, what drives them? What do they want? What are the stimulus that they're, really hoping for?
Well, what's really interesting is as adults, sometimes we just think we have no idea what drove them to do that, but they want to connect. They want to belong, but they're at a really critical stage of development in that middle years of that early adolescence where they're letting go of some younger behaviours and connections. They're starting to try and get their own independence, but they're still not mature enough to be as independent as, say, the boys they're looking to in grade 10, 11 and 12. They're also working out who they are as a person and as they're becoming a young man. So it's about their own value system versus what we're trying to instill in them at Nudgee versus what the influences are in friendships and social groups and family dynamics outside of Nudgee. And so, yeah, it's about their own identity, and they're taking risks for the first time, and they're thinking differently, and they're curious, and they're trying to discover the rest of the world in a way they haven't up until then.
I love it. And, I asked this question because I'd like to think that listening to this podcast to students and obviously old boys, but also a lot of parents. So I want to ask this question for the parents who are listening is, how important are they in for a student that is in grade 7, 8 or 9? Like, what role do the parents play in helping students connect or helping them with their relationships or helping them develop at this stage?
Our parents and guardians are critical because they're the first port of call for young men in terms of they're looking up to their parents as role models. And for so many...
See, I always imagine the myth is that by the time they're in grade 7, 8, 9, it's all about friendship groups. So parents are, yeah, thanks, mum and dad, got it, I'm good.
Oh, look, from the boys' perspective, you're exactly right. Parents don't know much and they haven't been there before. But the reality is for us as educators, we know that working in partnership with parents makes a real difference while the boys are backing away, sometimes from us, sometimes from them, sometimes from both, to go and make their own decisions. So the role of the parent's critical, but the role changes and it's really challenging. And I can say that myself as a parent. As they grow up, you've got these patterns and these ideas of how you're going to manage your child, and then suddenly you're doing the same thing and they're reacting differently, and that's okay. And it's really normal for them to pull away. But it's really, really confronting as a parent. And that's where I think we're in such a privileged position as educators in general, but particularly in our line of work as in pastoral care and formation is sometimes we're the ones boys will come to before parents, or it can be vice versa. And that's why we need to work together at this age where they're letting go, but we don't want them to go too far too soon.
Definitely. And I remember myself being here at the school, the teachers and the coaches that I had, they were like parent figures to me. And I did go to them first. Like my swimming coach I spent more time with than probably anyone, across those 5 years at the school. I remember having troubles and going to see my drama teacher and being in tears because I was really upset about something that had happened because I went to someone that I trusted. And I think that having adults adults that aren't just parents around young men in their development is really important, that they can learn from and trust and grow from.
Yeah, well. Absolutely. And you look at family dynamics have changed over the years for different reasons and what makes up a family. And I think many, many years ago, there was a lot more aunties and uncles around, and kids are looking, they still need mentors and they still need different options. And sometimes parents can feel really rejected by that. But if you put them in an environment where any influence is positive for them and they've got... And for young men in particular, when we really want to prioritise mental health and education, if they have someone trusted they can go to, if it's not mum or dad, but it is someone that they can trust that's an adult that will look out for them, then we've all had a win.
Yeah, I think about that a lot with my kids is like, how do I have other men who are great role models around my boys?
Yeah, absolutely.
And my daughter as well.
Yeah.
That'll help them in those developmental years. You sound like such an amazing asset for this school, and it's the first time we've really spoken. So congratulations on the college for bringing in someone like yourself with your energy and your knowledge, and you've studied this field. How did you find your way to working at Nudgee College?
Well, it's an interesting one. Thank you for the compliment. But I will say on the back of that, I think the reason I'm able to answer the way I am is because I've worked here for so long and I've been formed by so many other people. So I'd like to think I am contributing, but as a result of what I've got out of this place as well, because it's so much more than a place of employment. But how did it all begin for me? I was a teacher in Education Queensland, which I loved, working out west in Roma. Took a break from that and was working in Rugby League development. One of the camps for that happened to be here in a school holiday. And I was just at a place in my life, I always thought I'd stay out essentially west of the Darling Downs and stay in small communities. But I actually, funnily enough, I'm phys ed trained, natural redhead, had to literally start thinking about not working in the sun as much. And just a random opportunity came up where I came here for 12 months to essentially be a glorified teacher aide in the Indigenous education program. That's what it was at the time. And working with some borders. So I was essentially a glorified teacher aide. I thought, I'll do that for 12 months, then I'll work out what I'm doing. And that was in 2011. So from there, I've done a whole heap of different things at Nudgee, got back into the classroom, found my way into pastoral care, That's where, the bulk of my time has been at Nudgee. So that's I think, the answer to your question.
No, it is. It does make a lot of sense. Now, I want to talk about your rugby league career and obviously sport as well, because that's a big part of your past and obviously what you're doing right now. You are a listen to me, I can't speak.
Right.
A trailblazer in women's rugby league. You're a young girl from Warwick. Did you have dreams when you were growing up of playing rugby league and representing, and we'll talk about your accolades in a second, but did you have dreams as a kid of being a rugby league player?
Not at all. Not at all. Like I'm a child of the 80s and 90s in Warwick, Queensland, that women weren't that visible in most sports. We had some of our swimmers in track and field in Olympics. I loved sport. I came from a sports mad family. A lot of our dinner conversations was around any type of sport happening. The radio on the weekend was Dad listening to the cricket or the rugby league and that sort of thing. So sports naturally in my DNA from both sides of my family. I always had aspirations to represent Queensland and Australia, and pretty much in anything that I like. I didn't really even have a set sport as such.
What were your sports? Like, did you sort of do everything, or were you?
Yeah, look, as a kid, I'd go to anything that was on. Somewhat limited opportunities in Warwick, wasn't too bad. Track and field was a huge passion of mine growing up, and netball, that was really social. My friends did that. I spent a childhood on the sidelines of local junior and senior rugby league in Warwick because of my brother and extended family's involvement. So I loved rugby league, lived for the state of origin, had a real love for the game, played it in the backyard, wanted to play it as a little girl, wasn't allowed and didn't have opportunity. There was no such thing as pathways for women. So if you asked little Joey Barrett, would she have loved to have been a Jillaroo, and I knew they existed, the answer would have been yes. I just didn't know it was an option.
Yeah.
But I had an opportunity in high school to represent Queensland in track and field, and I just thought that was the greatest thing, and I've probably peaked. And then it wasn't until much later in life I had an opportunity in rugby league as the women's game was growing.
Yeah, how did that come about? Did you start playing rugby league after school and then?
No, it still wasn't an option. So I was just fumbling around at uni, did about track and field till I was about 20, went home to Warwick to do prac teaching. They were having a one-off women's charity match as a spectacle, like for the right reasons, but people would come to laugh and couldn't believe, socio-culturally it wasn't acceptable for women to play rugby league. Mm-hmm. Drew a big crowd. Steph Hancock was in that game, childhood friend of mine. We played against each other. I just took to it like a duck to water. I'd spent my whole life playing it in backyards and around the edges of all the boys in my life. And from there we were told there was a competition in Brisbane. We represented Toowoomba in that. And it kind of took off pretty quickly in that. Then I found out there was a Queensland team. Then I found out there was an Australian team. And once I knew that was in existence, I was like, I'll do what it takes to make it.
You were after it.
Yeah.
And what position did you start playing in those early days? Did you sort of play a bit of everything, or?
Oh, look, I was travelling from Cunnamulla to come off the bench for Toowoomba Phillies for about 15 minutes. I was quite overweight. I'd partied pretty hard in my late teens, early 20s. Love the country lifestyle. So I was coming off the bench at prop. That's when I first represented Queensland. I was a forward, decided to get fit and make a few changes, and then debuted for Australia off the bench in the forwards, played as a prop in my first World Cup, but actually ended up, strangely enough, in the centres when I finished my career.
Amazing, big, strong centre. That's
yeah,
fast. Are you
like
fast?
That. I'm fast. No footwork to speak of, but yeah, I could run. I could run for a big girl.
When you debuted for Queensland in 2004, what were the conditions like? What were the facilities like? Did you get paid to play? What was that? Paint a picture for me in 2004 representing the state.
Yeah, never made a dollar out of rugby league as a player in my whole career. Had a team levy, so we paid. No camp, a couple of training sessions. I'd travel from Warwick to join. I had no idea where to stand for kickoff. I'd go to the end of lines on drills because even when I played club footy, because I travelled, I never made training. So I was just turning up and playing.
But that first game was a tough one for you, the Queensland game?
Really tough. We played at Suncorp Stadium, so facilities amazing, but at about midday where no one could go and watch. But the team jersey was I think it was a set from Burleigh Bears. So in terms of facilities and jersey presentations, none of that. Got to play at Suncorp, but with about 3 minutes to go, busted my ACL. Oh. Yeah, had to give the jersey back because they were playing 2 games that year and someone else needed it. So very primitive compared to what I've seen as a staff member and what we see on TV now. But certainly no national competition to speak of, no media coverage. We were in a phase there, the Queensland team, where we won 17 years in a row, and I was part of 7 years of that streak, and no one really would have even known that was going on at the time. So,
And what are your feelings when you think about that and reflect on it? Does it make you angry?
Not angry. I'm still really proud and privileged to have even got a chance to run around in it. I think back to those times. They were simple. They were fun. They were, we didn't have a stand full of people, but it kind of didn't matter. Like the jersey meant enough to us, and so did the experience. And if anything, I look back and I'm so proud of where the game's come and where society's shifted to just normalise it and normalise those opportunities in lots of sports for women.
Totally. And you think of Rugby League with the NRLW and the television coverage that it's getting is sensational alone. The fact that those games are being played in prime time and club games are being played on television as well. And I think it's a global trend that we're seeing. You look at the following for the Chelsea Women's Football Club around the world, which obviously Sam Kerr has been playing for a long time, and Millie Bright, amazing support and coverage for those athletes in the UK. In the US, the women's NBA is getting primetime coverage around the country, with amazing basketball games being televised. So I just think it's nice to see the recognition for women's sport in some of those leagues getting primetime access so that viewers can watch them and follow the sport.
And that's how it grows, and that's how the opportunities open up for everyone to embrace women's sport. And I know as a kid, I'd just hang off anything I saw about women in sport. I'd cut out articles. I'd keep scrapbooks because it was so rare and it was so inspirational. And now you just couldn't keep up with the amount of media coverage, and that's a sign of the times. And, I've spent over a decade in this little bubble, the community of Nudgee College, which is all boys and so, outside looking in, so rugby focused, which is also wonderful for me. But what I've learned over time is even in this little corner of the world, the conversation, the normalisation, the influence of women in sport, and this is so different now. And boys just, they see a poster of the women's Broncos or Ali Brigginshaw on a bus, and they'll ask about the tipping comp, and it's not the NRL, it's the NRLW. And that just, for me, I can sit back and go, I love the way the world's going in terms of that visibility for women in sport. And I think genuinely that's really good for our young men.
Definitely. Even my boys came back from school and they had 3 playing cards of 3 Broncos players, and one of them was the captain of the women's Broncos team. Yeah. And they're reading about her stats, and that's really cool, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's interesting because I agree. We're a similar age, but I didn't know about women's rugby league. I don't know if maybe it was being played in the early 90s. I'm not sure, but we still have a lot of amazing female athletes that are idolized. That we idled as kids, but it wasn't necessarily, rugby league teams or rugby union teams. But who were your idols as a kid? That were female. Did you have female idols that you looked up to?
Yeah, look, yes, I did. I love Vicky Wilson, because she was from Brisbane and, so the Queensland aspect. I loved all those sort of 80s athletes like Raylene Boyle. And even, I wasn't really a swimmer, but I loved watching the Commonwealth Games and the success of the Australian women's swimmers like Lisa Curry-Kenny and Karen Van Wertem, who works at Nudgee.
Amazing.
So I love those sorts of people. And then Marion Jones and a lot of those US athletes who just dominated at the Olympics, I just thought were amazing.
So the women's game has come a long, long way. Where do you think it can go?
Oh, I get asked that quite a bit, Wes, and it's a bit hard to define because it's moving rapidly. The game's changing under our feet, and I've had the privilege of working in administration with the women's game at a few different levels as sort of a volunteer and being paid, and it's changing by the week. I'd like to think we consolidate a national competition, which we have, but it could be stronger and we could have more depth and close those pathways from schoolgirls right through. I'd love to see the coverage, the media coverage keep going, the crowds keep building. I think there's a perception the women are full-time. They're still not. There's an expectation they perform like they are, but they're not. So when they get to a place where they're not trying to balance part-time jobs and working on their feet all day, which the majority are, we've got our superstars who can rest a bit more, but most of them still are managing that recovery time. So I think for women to be full-time athletes and have the full-time opportunities would be ideal.
Yeah, I love that. It would be great to see. Now you've also you touched on it, but you have spent some time in sports administration. How do you find that side of the paddock? How do you find being in the admin side?
Yeah, it's good. It's really interesting as a player because there's that old grump in you that goes, oh, back in my day, we didn't have massages every night in camp, and we didn't get paid that. But you've got to pull away from that, and I think teaching helps you do that on the daily because you do want things to progress. You want kids to have more technology and better opportunities in the classroom and not hold them back. And as an administrator, I've found it. I love it. I get a lot of energy from it. I love watching the journey, and I love what sport and the opportunities in sport do for young women who might otherwise have a completely different life trajectory that isn't as good. So being at the front, getting a front row view of that is awesome. And I just love learning. That side of things is different to teaching. So I'm getting a lot out of it in terms of the challenge of it as well.
And you mentioned you're a Jillaroos selector.
Yes.
What does that mean? Like, do you sit around with a table full of cards like this and move faces around, or how do you?
Oh, it's decision fatigue. Look, there's a few of us in it, and it does change over time. But essentially, the NRL are very good at giving you a whole heap of stats. And I'm not a maths teacher, but I don't mind sports stats. So you've got an obligation to keep an eye on the game, keep an eye on the competition. So you watch a lot of games, you watch it over time. We have meetings, we share ideas. We hear from the coaching staff on what they're looking for, and there's a little bit to it. But I guess, again, what works for me as a teacher is we judge a lot, teachers. We assess things and we fill out criteria sheets, and it's not unlike that. But it's also, I guess, I probably see my role a little bit more as as a former player. We also look at the integrity factor off the field and what dynamic girls are coming into, and a bit like a house dean at Nudgee, how we can support them too. Like what things are in place to make sure our players are in the best possible position to represent the country.
I was going to ask you that actually. I was going to ask what are the sort of what have you learnt in the classroom or in your role as a director of students that you can apply and helps you in the field with the rugby league athletes that you're working with?
Everybody's got a different story behind the scene that influences performance.
Interesting.
I think that's probably a big one that transfers really well for me. And young boys are going to be adults one day, but sometimes they're just going to be a bigger version of who they are in front of you right now. And you try and work with that, and you deal with adult women who are playing and working in rugby league, and they might be adults, but they're still sometimes like kids who need a bit of support.
Yeah, exactly.
So it transfers quite nicely, but there's differences as well. But I've found there's a dynamic in managing a group of teenage boys that is very similar to a team of sportswomen as well.
Well, I like what you said, because you imagine a classroom or a sporting team, you've got 13 kids or 30. Like they're all coming from different backgrounds and with different challenges or different stimuli that has brought them there and is affecting their mood and their performance. And in a way, whether you're a teacher or a coach or you're picking the squad for the Jillaroos, you're looking for ways to best motivate those individuals in a group setting to succeed.
Yeah, and you're all trying to get them to go in the same direction.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And you also commentate for Fox League.
Yes, I do.
How do you find that?
I love it. It's
I mean, there's a lot of people listening that are probably students at Nudgee that would love to be a rugby league commentator.
Yeah.
So spill the tea. What's it really like?
Well, I've actually been sort of in and out, like with commentating now for about 10 years. That's since the first women's game was ever covered, I got to do that, and I got sort of thrown into it on the deep end.
Do you call play-by-play?
I don't do play-by-play. That's a goal of mine though. Like I'd like to get there on that, but I just do colour and analysis for now. What was the question again?
How do you find it?
How do I find it? I love it.
Oh, spill the tea. What's it really like?
Yeah, it can be stressful and I get nervous. It gives me a bit of a rush. It's as close as the feeling I've ever got to playing, because you do all this prep and it's a big moment and people are watching. More people are watching media than they were watching me play. But then when you're in it, you've just got to go with what's in front of you. You've got to back the work you did before kickoff, and you've got to manage the pressure. Which is very similar to teaching teenage boys, but also the thing about commentating I've had to learn over time and remind myself is you will make mistakes, but you can't dwell on it because it can just impact the rest of your performance, and you've just got to be really focused. And as what do the kids say these days? Locked in.
You got to say locked in.
I also love that it makes me vulnerable.
How do you manage your biases? Because surely when you're watching Queensland play New South Wales, you just desperately want the Maroons to win.
Oh, look, I don't even know if I manage them. When it's Origin, I just can come in as a one-eyed Queenslander.
Really?
Yeah,
That's
I do
great.
sometimes.
Yeah.
But when it comes to analysis, no, I've got to be fair. Look, I think I can. I'd like to think I'm professional, and I'll strip away that and just do my job. And if my job's to analyse and New South Wales, which they did dominate this, if they're doing well, I've got to own that and I've got to do that. And I think it's important we spend our lives as teachers telling kids what to do and take chances. I think it's important that we keep doing that ourselves as humans.
So you had an amazing playing career, and you're now in this also professional role at Nudgee. Are there any sort of like leadership qualities that you've learnt from your playing career that you apply now, in your professional career here at Nudgee?
Yeah, look, I think definitely, the age-old analogy of teamwork, and that certainly comes into it, and work ethic's a huge one. The work ethic I had to apply as a Gillaroo and what I had to do on my own to deliver for the team is very similar to leadership. You go away, you work on yourself to come back and be better, serve others, put others first. Probably the standout for me from my footy days that's transferred for me with Nudgee that I've not given a lot of thought till now is you don't necessarily – I was never the captain of the rep teams. I was never the best player, and I didn't play in a position of that influence like hooker, half, fullback. But I'd like to think I had leadership and I was a positive influence on my teams, and I think that's transferred into my career away from footy, as you don't have to be the boss or have the title or be the one in charge of a project to be a leader and be influential. I think it's really also important. I did this a lot as a player. You have to be a good follower. You have to go with the direction we're going in. And, if Karen Murphy, my halfback, told me it was my hit up and I didn't really feel like it because there was two big Kiwis facing me, too bad, that's my job, get it done. So I think those sorts of things have absolutely helped me in my career in teaching in general, but absolutely at Nudgee.
What a great reference or analogy, because in a school of 1,500 plus students, you can't all be the leader. You can't all be the captain of the team, but you can still have influence. Yeah. And that influence can be harnessed in really powerful ways by, applying yourself, listening, as you said, being a great follower.
Yeah.
And so you don't have to have the badge to make a big impact, in the classroom or on the field.
And I think too, I wasn't a glamorous player. I'm not even being self-deprecating.
Tell
I
me
just
more.
wasn't.
What do you mean? You got the elbows out.
No, but I think too, and a lot of the jobs I've had to do at Nudgee, including the one I'm in now, a lot of that isn't glamorous, and it is a tough conversation. It's not the fun stuff.
Yeah.
But it works for me, and I love it.
Well, this has been an easy conversation. So thank you very much for joining us on the podcast today. Like I said, I think the school is so lucky to have you. I want to ask you one final question. It's a real curly one.
Nervous.
Drum roll. If you could give one piece of advice to a prospective family considering Nudgee for their son's future, what would that piece of advice be?
Right. Piece of advice to a family would be, if you're considering Nudgee, I think Nudgee's got tremendous opportunities for young men and boys, and we love what we do here. But it's really important we work in partnership, because we can't do it on our own. I don't think parents and guardians can do it on their own. And to form our young men to be the best version of themselves as they walk out of these gates like you did and be men of integrity and compassion and service, come with us and work with us.
I love that. Great advice. Good luck with the rest of the year. I look forward to seeing you on the television commentating very, very soon. Let's hope the Maroons win next year.
Yes, absolutely.
In the Women's State of Origin. And Jo Barrett, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
Wow, what an episode. I love hearing how Jo has taken her techniques that she uses in the classroom and implemented them into the commentary box and into the sporting field. The growth of Women's Rugby League has been absolutely incredible, and Jo has been a large part of that story. Next up on the podcast is husband and wife combo whose Nudgee's legacy spans over 4 decades. It's the lovable Paul and Jo Curran.
Yeah, well, the boys were always respectful.
Yes.
I always felt safe. I always felt part of it, and that I actually belonged here.